Hello, my name is Nick Schramek, and I'm here with Howard Chao, and we are the founding partners of a company called Dune Insights. At Dune Insights, we are bringing together a community of early stage tech startups, investors, corporates, and others in the innovation ecosystem. We gather this community together several times a year to take a look at some of the most cutting edge startups out there as a lens into what technologies are coming next. I've been working with tech startups and investors in Silicon Valley for almost a decade, helping them source capital and understand the innovation ecosystem.
I'm Howard Chow, the other co-founder of Dune Insights, and as well an active early stage tech investor. After a career as a corporate lawyer, I started investing in tech companies about a decade ago. And in order to educate myself on my investments, I began inviting some smart friends up to my ranch outside of Silicon Valley in the mountains of Santa Cruz to talk about tech and learn about new startups and startup investment opportunities. And then a couple of years ago, as my business on the event side got bigger, I invited my friend Nick to join me to form a company to continue this work and to build our network of investors and innovators. So why another podcast? Well, Nick and I speak to some really smart people each day in our search for the best new startups out there. We also speak to some top investors, both from the venture side as well as large corporations who are experts in their domains. And with so many interesting conversations, we just felt that more people would benefit from hearing these conversations. So we're recording these conversations and making them available to the public.
With this new podcast, which we are entitling What's Next In, Howard and I take a look at several key industries that are experiencing monumental changes recently and will most definitely look nothing like they have in the next 10 or 20 years. Our work at Dune Insights and this podcast currently focuses on four main areas. One, the future of food and agriculture. We are in the middle of a revolution right now in the way that we produce, distribute, and eat food, and what we eat as well. People want more of their food, demanding that it not only be nutrient rich, but also safe to eat, readily available, and affordable. Doing this in an increasingly complex world with challenges in supply chains, food safety, and food security, not to mention reducing the impact that food and agriculture have on climate change, will require numerous technological innovations. Luckily, there are brilliant people trying to solve these challenges.
Number two, we focus on the future of mobility. As we all know, the entire model for energy sources and propulsion for transportation is undergoing radical transformation. Not just one, but tens of large companies are facing huge disruption unless they reinvent themselves. This is, of course, primarily driven by concerns about climate change, which has triggered the move towards alternative energy sources, electrification, and new energy storage technologies. Facilitating these changes are new classes of sensors, advances in robotics, pervasive AI, and better communication systems. It's an exciting soup of new technologies and business models.
Number three is the coming world of Web3. Despite the recent crypto winter, we believe that in the medium to long term, blockchain will change technology and how we run our lives in fundamental ways in the same way that the internet did. The movement of top talent and capital into crypto and Web3 ideas continues apace, and traditional financial institutions have not paused their digital asset initiatives. Right now, we tend to think of Web3 and crypto as a sector, but in the future, it will pervade everything. Just like we stop thinking of internet companies as a category, so will we stop thinking of crypto companies as a category.
And our fourth area of focus is the future of legal technology. As a former longtime corporate lawyer, I can attest that the legal services industry has been one of the slowest adopters of technology around, but that is changing. Precisely because so little has been done to modernize the industry means that there is a lot of upside. A substantial number of young lawyers and technologists have jumped on this opportunity to provide more efficient technology solutions to law firms, to companies, and consumers. To me, one of the most exciting developments in the sector is what can be done on the B2C front. Software and AI is now able to provide legal services to consumers in areas where previously no services were available because law firms didn't want to provide services at really low costs. So these four areas are each facing their own challenges, but one thing they have in common is that they are all dominated by big incumbents that have for decades now been able to get by with incremental innovation. While other industries have witnessed technological leaps that have seen winners take a large market share, these four areas are still dominated by companies that have been around for decades, if not for 100 years. So their time in the limelight may be coming to an end if they're not able to innovate and create new paradigms for their business. So we hope you enjoy this wide-ranging podcast series. Listen on.
As you say, Howard, you were a former attorney for 30 plus years, so a long time in the industry. So you've seen quite a bit of the adoption of technology in the space. But maybe you could just speak a little more about why legal tech is so appealing to you.
Yeah, right. So as you can imagine, I've seen the evolution of the legal industry for many years. But frankly, the evolution was more on the business side and less on the tech side for decades. And the legal industry has been slower to adopt new technologies and digitalization than most industries for a variety of reasons. One of them, of course, is that the legal industry is just very traditional, conservative, slow to change. And the law firms in particular are, set in their ways and have been. And so I can remember the days when I first started practicing. And things were, of course, very manual back then, but that changed much more slowly in the legal industry and profession than most others, I think. So it's precisely because the legal industry has been so slow to change that I think there's a lot of opportunity and upside. It's the same with a lot of other industries that, the more there is work to be done, the more there is an opportunity. And so in particular in the legal industry, there's a lot of opportunity to automate a lot of processes, a lot of jobs. There's a lot of opportunity to help big sort of incumbent organizations become more efficient, whether it's law firms or corporate legal departments or even others with their legal needs. So that's sort of intuitively one of the reasons why I think it's a very interesting area. And plus, it's a big industry. The TAM is very large.
Yeah, so unlike a decade or so ago, legal tech has now really seen technology enable so many different areas of it. So you see all these new tools coming out that help lawyers do their job better and more efficiently, and help consumers access legal services in a much more efficient manner. So out of all what we're seeing out of legal tech, what excites you the most?
Yeah, so originally the area that was the most active was basically litigation and discovery services, right? So that was the area that saw the first movement. But over the last few years, we've seen a lot more initiatives in the corporate practice and transactions in helping people do deals more efficiently and effectively. And big law firms have been adopting these platforms. Corporate legal departments have been. It's been an area where the larger vendors of software services have paid attention, and indeed, you can see a lot of private equity firms now investing in this sector, which gives you an indication it's become mature. But so better serving and making more efficient legal departments of large corporates as well as law firms is obviously a continuing and growing opportunity. But it's more than that. Right. So we know, for example, that automation and software can permit ordinary consumers to obtain legal services where they couldn't before. Right. And so legal tech is definitely addressing consumer legal services in a way that law firms didn't want to in the past. And there are many other applications out there. For example, Reg Tech, we're making the regulations and compliance functions much more accessible through software and automation. We're making it easier to do filings and to make data more accessible. So there's a lot of different ideas, increasing number of ideas that are coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at startups in all sorts of different areas. So food and agriculture, biotech, crypto, fintech, auto mobility tech. And one thing that really strikes me about legal tech is that you need a really specific skill set to be a legal tech entrepreneur. You can't just know the technology. You can't just know the law side. You kind of have to know the inside baseball of how the law profession works, but also have an idea about how innovation can enable certain things. So how do you kind of understand this push and pull between the professional needs and the technological needs of the founders?
Yeah, that's always one of the questions and issues that I'm thinking about when I interview startups in this area. And there are a lot of startups, right? So you'll see some startups where it's just a bunch of engineers and there's no lawyer on the team. And then I worry a bit about that because, you know, these technologists, they may think that, well, I'm a fast learner, right? So even I can write software for any industry, right? And so we don't really need to I mean, we can have advisors as consultants, I mean, lawyers, but we don't have to have a lawyer on the team. And I worry about that because the legal profession is very specific and there's a lot of inside baseball within the industry, which you may not absorb very easily. On the other hand, you see some startups that are started by, you know, former associates of law firms that are not really technologists, right? And so they say, oh, I can just hire some developers to help me write this code in this platform. And there again, I just worry about, well, how competitive is that technology going to be if they're not really strong in the technology itself? So what I like to see and what I like to look for are startups that have both, basically, because maybe the associate is also a former software developer, or because they have two founders, they're one of each, you know, or some other way to address the two sides of that equation.
And Howard, how do you think that legal tech will change the competitive landscape in legal?
Yeah, so that's a complicated question, but it's an important one because what legal tech does is it enables new ways to serve legal customers, and you can imagine this unfolding in different ways. For example, there could be new forms of legal practice that arise and already have arisen that compete directly with law firms. It could enable existing competitors, law firms, even accounting firms, to perform more effectively and therefore become stronger than those firms that don't adopt technology. But also it could mean that there could be kind of a merger between legal tech firms and existing practitioners, in the sense that, you know, law firms or other providers could add a new division that does something that they didn't do before. For example, consumer legal services, right? So law firms today, they don't really like to serve, you know, the person on the street, because it's just not economic. You know, they can't make enough money off of it. But suddenly, if you have an arm that is much more automated, then you might be able to do that, and that might synergize with your existing practices in some way. So those are interesting potential developments.
No, absolutely. I mean, legal, more than many other things we look at, I feel that it's not going to look anything like it did 10 years ago, and in 10 years it will look nothing like it does today. And
Right.
the change is happening at such a fast pace. And that's what we're doing with this podcast. We're going to interview a number of entrepreneurs that are creating legal and reg tech tools for lawyers, corporate legal departments, and consumer-facing tools, as well as thought leaders in the industry. And for our first episode, Howard is going to interview the founder of Cloverleaf AI. So what did you find interesting about this startup, Howard?
Right. So as you will see, Cloverleaf AI is a company that is basically digitalizing and making available government meetings, whether at the state or the federal level throughout the country, and making them searchable and making them accessible. So that's a really interesting development, because it means that people, whether it's law firms or corporates or other customers, will be able to have access to a very large pool of data that they really couldn't access very easily in the past. And the use cases are myriad. You know, you could use them for business development. You could use it for competitive advantage. You could use it for many purposes, probably that we can't think of yet right now. But it's pretty exciting.
Great. Well, with that, let's get right into it. This is Howard speaking with the founder of Cloverleaf AI.
And today we will be interviewing a startup named Cloverleaf AI with their founders, Jeremy Becker and Adam Zucker. But before we get into that, let me just introduce my co-interviewer, Zach Posner, our good friend from the Legal Tech Fund, who has his firm has kind of just occupied the name Legal Tech Fund, right? So no one else can be the Legal Tech Fund. So he's it. But Zach, can you tell us what you do and a little bit about yourself and your fund?
Absolutely. So, and thank you for having us, Howard. So my name is Zach Posner. I'm a co-founder and managing partner at the Legal Tech Fund. We are investing in companies that are transforming the world of law. We early stage investor. We invest in three broad categories. That's software that enables law firms, software that enables clients, and you can think of a client as a corporate law firm. You can think of a client as a consumer. You can think of a client as a business unit. And then the third bucket is software that enables the regulatory ecosystem. And I'm bringing them up because I think it's all very relevant to the work that the team at Cloverleaf AI is doing. And we are out there investing in this space. We have worked really hard to develop a community of experts that are designed to help accelerate our companies. Howard, we kind of count you as one of those experts, and excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us today, Zach. So we're going to turn quickly to Jeremy and Adam. Jeremy is the CEO and Adam's the CTO of Cloverleaf. And we'll start by asking them to give a little bit of the origin story of Cloverleaf and a little bit about your personal backgrounds.
Sure, happy to. So Jeremy Becker, co-founder, CEO. I spent 8 years in early stage distressed assets, private equity, and quickly got tired of wearing that much black. Moved quickly into being VP of product for a scaling startup based out of Boston. Took an executive MBA through Northwestern during COVID. Came in with the idea, build out a product, figure out how to get that go-to-market going, all that. But at this point, it was still just an idea. And that idea was a very early stage kind of beta version of Cloverleaf AI. I've known Adam since I was 3. We grew up together, and he's always worked in software development. On one of those classic Zoom COVID catch-ups, we were playing Settlers of Catan, and we were just talking about, what are you working on right now? I pitched him the idea, and he looked at me and said, I can build this. And that's how we got our beta. I'll let Adam kick it off and a little bit of his background, though.
Yeah, so I'm Adam Zucker, CTO, co-founder of Cloverleaf. I spent about 10 years in the software industry working at a variety of startups, kind of all stages and sizes. My focus and pride is in building efficient, customer-focused products. I love technology, but I love even more products that actually solve problems. So that's why when Jeremy came to me, this was so interesting, is because it just seemed so obvious to me. And so there was everyone I've explained it to, all my friends and family, they immediately think of use cases for it. So as a builder, this was just a really exciting project, and the last year has been amazing for us. So, yeah.
Well, it certainly grabbed me when I heard about it, and obviously that's why we invited you to present at Bonnie Doon. But let's get to the heart of the matter and have you guys just explain the essence of what you do. What is the essence of your technology? What is it that you are producing?
Yeah, so at its core, what our platform does is it ingests government meeting videos, and that can be from your local school board up to the federal government. We then run that video through a speech-to-text engine and provide you with what you could see as a searchable transcript. And that's great to be able to jump to the moment in a given transcript. But the real power of our platform is that it jumps you to the exact moment in the video, so you can see who is saying what, how are they talking about it. You can snip that clip, share it along, sign up for alerts. So every time your key terms are mentioned, we will send you an email that allows you to jump to that moment. And I know that's a lot of software mumbo jumbo, but to think about it as like a use case. So if we think of like a multi-client government affairs firm that is repping clients all across the state, right now they're monitoring these government meetings manually, or they're missing things that matter to their clients. We give them the opportunity to be in every government meeting and get that information immediately.
So that inherently sounds interesting and useful. Who do you think are the primary users of this product?
So we break it into 3 different categories. So we have what we call opportunity identification. So those are folks that are searching for government grants or new RFP dollars. For instance, we're working with the nation's largest telco to handle that problem right now, and have done so quite successfully for them thus far. Then we have reputation management. So that would be like that maybe it's a corporate law or internal corporate team or that multi-client team that needs to make sure that their clients' products are not being discussed negatively. And they have then the opportunity to educate people or stay ahead of some new regulation that might be coming down the pike. And then the third is just hardcore research, because we can go far back. So if you need to know what so-and-so said 8 years ago in the Phoenix City Council meeting, you can either have an intern watch 1,000 hours at least of government meetings, or you can just type in the keywords that you want to find and narrow down that date range and get the exact clips.
So that raises an interesting question, which is how broad is your coverage, right? So you said you could go back 8 years. I mean, geographically, how broad, how in terms of just agencies, in terms of chronology, how broad is your universe of data?
So we can only go as far back as video exists. Out of the box, we go a year back. But if a client needs something 8 years back, we can go find it. As far as agency coverages, that is also, we are at, we need to be responsive to what is available. So I like to say there's a town here in Colorado that has like 8 people in it. And no, they aren't posting videos, but at the same time, are they really the highest value city for you to be going after? So at a very high level, that was a long way to say, we get you about 70% population coverage at a local level, 100 at a state, and 100 at a federal level. And out of the box, we go back a year.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, and I think that scale is something that's really important. When we think about laws or regulations, everybody goes to kind of, in their minds, they probably go federally if you're not working in the legal system. If you are, you probably think about state statutes. But, beyond the 50 states, there's, I think, 3,000 counties in this country. I think there's 19,000 towns and places. And, if you think about the fact that each one of them has a school board, each one of them has a town commission, I mean, that's where regulations are kind of created, and kind of opportunities and challenges kind of pop up every single day for all of the participants in the system.
Yeah, and when we talk about infrastructure dollars or RFPs as well, like Biden's new infrastructure bill, $1 trillion, there's going to be random towns of 50 or 100 or a couple hundred people that are going to get $2 million in an RFP. And if you are this telco and you're trying to track it, my guess is your focus isn't on the smallest towns in your state, but using our tool, you can focus on all of them equally, essentially, or you at least can get the information equally and immediately.
So Zach, are you an investor or thinking about it?
So sorry, we are an investor. We are a recent. We are proud to be a recent investor with these with these gentlemen and Cloverleaf. We're really excited to kind of help them reach their full potential.
Well, so maybe you can just briefly talk about the thesis that you were following and investing in them.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I just kind of laid it out. Just the massive amount of information that's out there in and around the regulations, and how many stakeholders that can affect is really important. I also think that Jeremy left a little bit of his background off and kind of himself growing up and what some of his experiences were, but he's thought about this problem long before COVID existed. And from our end, we've we saw a lot of the motions that you want to see happen with early stage companies, where you saw a couple beta customers pop up that, give early stage companies a shot. And then you watch them, you watch the engagement grow, you watch the customer value expand. And, it seems like they have some pretty thrilled customers, which is something that we're always looking for. But anyway, Jeremy, maybe it'd be helpful if you kind of give some of your way background. We'll take you back to when you were a kid.
Yeah. I apologize for skipping that. So my father worked in local government. He was a single father. So if he couldn't find a sitter, I would be in the back of these board meetings. I like to joke playing with my Tonka trucks, trying to not fall asleep. And so I intimately knew this problem. I've worked in software my entire career in one way or another. So it's, software is my hammer, and my nail was government meetings are incredibly long. And when you think about that problem, as Zach keeps saying, at scale, it's just an unsolvable problem. It was an unsolvable problem with manpower, but by using software to solve it, we can really drive efficiency.
So when I first heard of this idea, the thing that I thought about pretty quickly was this could be an arms race, right? There could be a lot of different kinds of users who, once they start to use it, their competitors or other people that are in their space say, well, gee, if they have it, we better get it. So can you talk a little bit about who those kinds of, what kinds of arm races might be triggered by your product?
Yeah, and I think in each of those three pillars, you can find that arms race. To keep it focused in this legal tech or reg tech, I like to compare us to like a LexisNexis or something along those lines, where you wouldn't hire a law firm in the country that didn't have access to a LexisNexis, or if you're a financial firm that didn't have a Bloomberg. There is an amount of, data you need to be able to stay on top of to provide your clients the best possible experience. Or once again, if it's an in-house team, make sure you're protecting your team as best you can. So there is kind of that tipping point that we will get to, where we will kind of be table stakes. If now it's LexisNexis, tomorrow it will be Cloverleaf AI, that you absolutely have to work with if you want to serve your clients.
So I'd like to get, we're limited in time here, and I'd like to get to your commercial traction and your capital formation situation. But before we get there, one last question on your product. So what is really hard technically or technologically about what you've done that gives you a moat? In other words, you're a small startup, you've got this great idea. If all these big players come out and they say, oh, this startup has a great idea, we're going to plow a lot of resources into it and basically do the same thing. Why is it that you're going to still have a leg up?
So we see our moat existing in a couple of different ways. The initial moat that we built is based on the fact that there's no central repository for all these different government organizations host their videos. So we had to go out, find them all. And then for a lot of them, we need to write custom integrations, because believe it or not, the government doesn't use one standard solution, and a lot of them run bespoke and unique products. So that was the first one. But long ago, back in December, we labeled the fact that data capture alone wasn't going to be a moat. So we started focusing back then on adding a data science layer, a layer of analysis, and then what we were calling wisdom on top of that, which is when we bring experience into the analysis. And the focus on there is, how do we become masters of the data and experts of the domain? How do we get to a place where we know what customers want before they know they want it? Because right now our product relies on them telling us what they're looking for, right? They input their search terms, they tell us the areas they care about. And there's a gap between the way they think their product or their opportunity is being talked about and the way it actually is. And we're helping bridge that gap for our customers. And that's that layer, that's the artificial intelligence layer, the AI of our name. That's what we really see setting us apart in the future and going forward and making this a defensible business.
Great, good answer. So let's turn to, because we're running short on time, let's turn to how much traction you've accomplished so far with customers, and then talk a little bit about your capital formation situation.
Yeah, of course. So we are now at 9 customers. I'm thrilled to say that we actually just poached one from one of our largest competitors last week, which is a great feeling. But amongst them, we have the nation's largest telecommunications company. We have the largest asphalt producer and road paver in the Midwest. And just to name a few, the 2 largest political research firms on both sides of the aisle that have partnered with us. So, can discuss more when we're all in person live. And as far as capital formation, we have a small amount of capital raised from Techstars and Legal Tech. Once again, excited to talk more about that when we all meet live in Bonnie Doon.
So are you planning to do a raise in the not too distant future?
Yes, we are. We are planning to go out for a seed raise shortly here.
Terrific. Zach, what am I missing?
I think you maybe just a use case, or how, pick any one of those customers and give us some examples as to how it's kind of changed their day-to-day life, for lack of a better word, or what it enables them to do.
Sure. So I'll jump in with that telco. So they started with us, as Zach was saying, those beta customers that kind of help you get rolling. They started with us for just monitoring one state and a 3-month pilot. Within month one of that, we found them a $3 million RFP that they had no idea existed. By the end of month 3, they had closed that RFP. So it's the ROI becomes pretty obvious there. But that's just how they started, was that opportunity identification. Now they're using us to monitor regulations, things as large as what the FCC might be talking about, to things as granular as what are franchise fees like in this town and how is that impacting our business. So that's just to show a few. They've now grown to 5 states, 27 users. So it's been a very fun experience with that specific group.
Terrific. Well, it sounds like a fascinating and useful idea. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, guys.
All right.